Hi guys, welcome to a special podcast episode. Today I'm joined by amazing businessman Ralph Keeton. So welcome to the podcast, Ralph.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
So do you want to kind of introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about kind of how you started out your business journey and your mediumship and stuff as well, and kind of like where you were.
Well, I mean, I went through the university scenario and went abroad to work. Went work in Amsterdam and then ended up in Eindhoven working for Philips. So I've always been involved in advertising, marketing, things like this, design work. Got fed up with that, came back here and then decided to go teach and explain it to everybody what and how to do things. Which I only actually temporarily wanted to do for a year or two, ended up 20 odd years doing it. So it just shows you, but I got a lot of thrills out of that because obviously I get guys like yourself, Dale, who you had on earlier, and people like this you meet, and it's really lovely to see people flourish with it. In the background to all this, I've always been very interested in my photography, so I've always done that, as well as now setting up a new photography company in the town here. And I'm growing that now as I'm doing that. And then even further back from that is my spooky stuff that I do, which is more the mediumship, ghost hunting, paranormal, things like that. And I'm actually known, that's what the big thing is, I'm known as the UK's most respected exorcist. And I fell into that by accident, so.
Do you want to, I mean, that's kind of like so much taken. I bet the viewers are just like, whoa. How did you kind of, on the spiritual side, how did you first know?
Right, that takes me right back to when I was a little kid. Okay, I'd be 6, 7 or 8, somewhere around there, I can't exactly remember when, but I remember lying on the bed. And I remember the sun, I think we've all maybe done this, where you lie down and the sun hits your face and you go, oh, so nice. And that's what I was doing, I was just relaxing. I had my eyes closed. And then I was aware of what I thought was my mother walking into the room. And so I'm talking away. I'm just sort of saying, oh, I love this sun, Mum. It's fantastic. And I had a voice come back to me. And she basically said, at one point, you're going to have to wake up and talk to me. And I thought, what are you doing? And I woke up and hovering above me, virtually parallel to me, was a woman looking straight down at me. And it's the creepiest thing ever. But being at that age, I didn't think anything of it. My brain was in that pattern of thinking maybe I'm dreaming still. But I had a full-on conversation with her. And then when she disappeared, my mother came up the stairs and my mum wanted to know who I was talking to. Wow. And that's actually how I started. Now, since then, this is going to sound weird, I know it is, and it always does, I hear her voice. Whenever I'm doing anything, I get like, the way I can describe it is I get a ringing in my ears, like a tinnitus sort of scenario, and then that stops, and then she talks to me. So it's like her calling card. Almost like, if you go to somebody's house, you press a doorbell. Yeah. Well, that's her way of saying I'm coming in to talk to you. And then that's how I've done a lot of my stuff. So from a very early age. And then my mum recollects a story. I would go out at night as a 8 and 9-year-old and go down the road where there was an old petrol station. It was all fallen to bits. But behind the back of that was a big old manor. And I would spend hours in there talking to things, seeing things like this. Mum always sort of says, even when I was a little child, I would be sitting in the classroom and I'd be looking like I'm mumbling to myself. And every time they would ask me, it was always like I was talking about other kids that were in there that they couldn't see, but I clearly could. But I can't remember those days. But, but that certainly that woman hovering above me since then has just followed me through. And that's how I got going, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did you get from... Because, I mean, if that happened to me, I'd be quite spooked. I'd be like, whoa, kind of, how did you get to kind of like nurture that?
Well, no, you see, that's the thing. This is the thing that I think I think if you think about it as an adult, yeah, it's scary. But if you think about a child, children have ghosts, they always say I've got a friend and so, but I really had one. I could see her and I would always talk to her and she was always friendly with me. So I didn't really get scared because I didn't at that age, and I have to say this to a lot of other parents, you don't realise that it's frightening or it's terrifying, that you just accept what you're seeing. Yeah. It took me quite a while to realise that nobody else around me could see or could hear her. And that's when I started realising there was a lot more going on and a lot more stuff going on.
And And then from that, how did, kind of like, obviously when you was a kid, you kind of had this special talent, but then when you went into adulthood and stuff, how did you
Well, I
kind
went
of
through.
understand more about it and kind of know, actually, I've got this kind of...
Well, that grew gradually. So if you take my childhood, I went through school talking and being that, and then got bullied. Then I went on to a bigger school, big comprehensive, and then I went from a little squat thing to this tall human being that I am now. And I decided to play rugby, and that toughened me up because the lads there wouldn't stand for it. And I realised then that I had to toughen up, and so the bullying side of things stopped for me. But I was always doing odd, quirky things. And I can remember getting pulled back into it by accident. I remember sitting on a bus with somebody and suddenly started telling her who was sat next to her and everything else, and it just kept going from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's how it got going. I've never really let it go. I got involved when I went abroad, I solved a murder. And then they literally had to get me back home because the press were hounding me.
Wow.
And again, imagine this. I go up in a lift, right? And there's a guy stood next to me, and he's got this orange top. I was in Holland. He got this orange top on, and his blondish kind of hair, but the perfect blue eyes, and you couldn't really... And he's standing there saying to me, "Can you help me?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he went, "Everybody's trying to break my door down. Can you stop them breaking my door down?" So I went, yeah, fair enough. "What floor do you live on?" And he went, "13th. Well, that was my floor. So you can imagine we get
a 13th as well, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, unlucky 13th. Yeah, well, yeah, but sometimes that's lucky. But anyway, so I get out, you see, and there was a crowd of people. There'd be about 10 or 11 people trying to knock this door down, and I sort of yelled at the top of my voice, whoa, this guy's got the key. And they all looked round at me and went, "What guy?" And I went, "The guy." I'm like, then I thought, he's gone in the lift, he's got down. So I said, "Well, the guy in the orange top with the blonde hair, the blue-eyed guy, you must have all seen him." Nobody did. Well, with that, the door burst open, and laid on the floor was the same guy.
Wow.
Blonde-haired, he'd got an orange top on, he'd got blue eyes and stuff. And what I didn't realise was the guy stood next to me was actually a police officer. Well, he immediately arrested me because he said, "How would you know that guy?" And I kept saying to him, "Well, he was stood next to me." They took me to the police station in Eindhoven. They took me to the police station and they interviewed me. And I was trying to explain to them that whilst I was working for Philips, I was painting and drawing and doing all the illustrative stuff. But I told them I'd got this little ability, and I was lucky that the sergeant that was there was English, and he understood me, understood what I was doing. And he then said to me, "Look, you can imagine it from their point of view. Suddenly, there's a stranger standing there, and I described the guy. He'd been knifed. Could I help them?" And I went, "Well, what do you mean?" And he brought in this jacket, and he said, "Put your hands on that." And I put my hands on it, and I closed my eyes, and I saw a little vision of it was a pinkish tree by a little pond. And I said that to him, and he went, "The only pinkish tree I know is a pond." They sent a guy off down there, and they found the knife, and then the fingerprints on it found the guy.
Wow, that's incredible.
And the press got hold of it, and he kept saying to me, "You can't go to court, you can't do that," And that's been my life, if I'm going to be honest with you. I've just fallen into things. I've not chased this, just fallen into it and fallen into the various bits and bobs. And that was a big thing for me, because when I came back here to the UK, obviously, I had the likes of Most Haunted and one or two others trying to talk to me, and a couple of film companies and etc. who were trying to get going. And I just followed it that way, so... Kind of a nice weird way into life, but that's how it... Then I decided with that side of things that I went to this house just outside Harrogate, big manor. It's all been redone up, and the building lads in there had been complaining. They'd been saying tools were disappearing, doors were slamming, they were all getting funny smells and things like this. Now, I'd be about maybe 21, 22, something like this. And I can remember going to the house, looking at the front door, and the guards were all explaining to me. And I said, "Well, I'll go in and see if I can find anything. I'll have a look." I walked in, and this thing came running at me, hit me in the stomach full on, and I flew backwards out the back of the door. Picked myself up, and I realised at that moment that I'd gone in dead cocky, like, I can do anything. I'm the bee's knees. I can take anything. This thing was bigger and stronger than me.
Wow.
And then I went back in with the idea of going to get rid of it. And I did a clearance, an exorcism in there. And that then started me off. Everybody then was asking me, "Can I do it here? Can I do it there?" And that's kind of how I've done it.
So you talk a lot about, like energies and stuff like that around us. I've heard you kind of talk quite a lot about that.
Right,
Can you explain an energy? What is?
well, it's a difficult one to get your hands on, because if we talk about quantum physics without going too wild, if you've got two what they call supercells, or the smallest cell you can possibly find, they're not linked like this.
Yeah.
They're a distance apart, too small for the eye to see, but they're a little distance apart. That little energy area there that's holding it together like a magnetic force is the bit I'm dealing with. So as a human being, we've got skins, and the skin's made up of a material, if you want to look at it from that point of view. When the material disappears, that's what you might term the spiritual energy, the ghost. That bit still thinks, still reacts, it's got no form, but that's the bit that we talk about, that's the ghost that everybody talks about. It's clever because it's see-through, but like the wind, you can certainly feel it when it's coming to you. It knows how to draw particles together. Okay, so I know full well that if I wanted to create a bit of fun in here, I would put a table with dust on it, smack it, and the dust would go in the air. Now, as a spiritual form, they can grab that and create what you and I would term that ghostly spectre.
Ah, right, okay.
Also, you've got to remember something else. Your nerves, which run right down the back of your spine, from the top of your head, to them are like a guitar string. So when this energy sees that, you as a skeletal form with the nerves, it can twing them, so it can make you feel like you've shivered. So it's like, I get a lot of people saying to me, oh, I feel like something just walked through me. And it has.
How's it, obviously when people say, oh, it's cold or something like that, is that something kind of like along the same?
Well, energy, take a light bulb.
Yeah.
That's energy.
Yeah.
Okay? If you put your hands on it, you'll feel its heat.
Yeah.
But what's happening to you is your heat's going into, because if you're cool,
yeah,
you're feeling its heat, and you're taking the coolness goes that way, so you feel colder.
Ah, right. Okay.
So if an energy's coming round you, it's a warm energy, you feel cold. If the energy's warmer than you, then you will start to sweat because it's hotter than you, and that's possible. But generally, most of them are warmer than you, and so therefore you feel your energy going towards it because you're cooling down, or the energy being drawn to them. Let me try and put it another way, trying to keep it in a nice simple way. Lightning is a natural phenomena that's created, that creates an electric jolt, big, you've seen it in the day. Well, this is the same, but it's on a lot smaller level. So it's like a very small, like a small battery compared to a lightning bolt. Such a small thing. But it can affect you and I, because you will have had people that have stood there and they've touched a piece of metal and they've got electric shock. You contain a charge.
Yeah, like a static charge.
That's what they are. They're like a charged energy, and you feel their energy. You can feel it with you. With me, I can tell before I've even started if it's a small energy around my knees, and I know I'm dealing with a child. If it's about my chest level, then I know I'm dealing with an elderly person, okay, because of the shape. If it comes at me strong, I know it's generally male. If it comes at me really sensitively and slowly and gently, I know it's female. So I get a sensation of like, it's like feeling the wind in your face. You can tell when it's going to be blustery because it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Yeah. The stronger it gets, the more I need to get out of there. Weird, isn't it? I know, but it's... they're all generally friendly. It's just our perception is what we think is not very good. Because we perceive... If I turn all the lights out in here now, the first thing everybody's going to do is go, what's in here, what's in here? And every little bump and every little crack starts to... And if it gets stronger and stronger, it gets frightening. Yeah. But that's our perception. They don't do that.
So this skill that you've got in like mediumship, how's that like kind of helped you?
You, like anything in life, you learn by mistakes. Now, I've always stood by the fact that I'm human. So whenever I do this form, I'm learning all the time. I don't know everything. I know enough to get me by. I know enough to get with everything I do. I have a big team of other people that I deal with, but you learn. So as I've gone through my processes, I've actually said to energies around me, tap my knee, give me a picture, do that. And then I've gone along that lines of trial and error, but I've done it so often now. I've been doing it for 40 years. Wow, yeah. So it's like, I've now got it to a fine art now, where if an energy sends me a picture or gives me a voice thing, I'll be able to sort of go, that means this to me. It can't send me a foreign picture. So if it sends me a picture of somewhere I've never seen, I would be as confused as anybody else. But so what it'll do, it'll send me a picture. Give you an example. I was dealing with a lady not long ago. And I said to her, you've got a little child around you.
Yeah.
And then I saw a pair of pink Wellingtons. Now, I wasn't really fascinated by the fact they were pink. It was the fact I saw Wellingtons. And I said to her, I said, oh, this little girl seems to be wearing Wellingtons. Well, a good woman started to tear up. And I said, funnily enough, I saw a pair of pink ones.
Yeah.
And she nearly fell over. Her daughter had died, and all she ever used to wear was pink Wellingtons. And she'd been buried with these pink Wellingtons on. And that's how it... But I saw Wellington first.
Yeah, and then you saw the colour.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Did another one with a woman in an audience, you know. I do a big stand-up show. And I had a woman, I kept looking at her and I kept saying, who's Nick? And she's looking at me going, I don't know what you mean. I said, well, I've got Nick. Nick's here, he wants to talk to you. She's got no idea. And I said, well, he knows you really well. I can feel his energy. And he's shouting at me, Nick, because I could hear a voice.
Yeah.
Because this guy was going, Nick. And so she looked at me and she went, I have no idea. And I said, well, look, I'm going to have to move on because obviously I've got it wrong, you know. I'm just about to talk to another woman and she went, oh my God, that's my husband. Well, everybody laughed, you know. And I said, how can you miss your husband? So she goes, no, his name's not Nick. Every time he had a police car going past, he used to stand up by the window, put his hand on his head and go, Nick. So I got it wrong because that's what he was doing to me. He was there going, Nick. I'm thinking he meant Nick.
Yeah.
So that's the human side of me, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, so that I get a lot of humorous things as well, so quite fun.
A big thing I'm keen to talk about today as well is how you ended up working with Steven Spielberg.
Oh, yeah.
In Monster House.
Yeah. I also run a big museum, okay? It's a big charity, and it's up in Hartlepool, and it's called the Youth Gun Battery. I went on one of my wild trips. I do this thing every now and again. I just jump in the car and think, what part of the country have I been to? I'm going to want to go and visit it. So I drove to Hartlepool. Well, I didn't actually mean to go to Hartlepool. I drove to Newcastle, and then I saw a sign that took me to Hartlepool. So I'm wandering around Hartlepool, and it's like stepping back in time is Hartlepool. If you ever see the film Exorcist, and you see that long alley with all those domed lights and that's the front of Hartlepool. It looks like that. So that's how old it is, you know. So anyway, I'm walking around there, and I walked onto this. It was like a big site, and these guys were clearing it up. And I said to the bloke there, I said, oh, you've got a death on here. There's a gentleman here who's broke his neck, and he's done this and this. And John, who was the other guy, the other director at the time, laughed at me and said, well, that's rubbish, you know. And I walked off. Within a day, he'd checked his records, and they'd all missed this particular gentleman who died on there, falling down some steps. So I got involved in the gun battery then, because I found, when they started telling me what it was for and everything, I thought it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I got involved in it. And now here I am, director of it, 22 years later. So everybody around Hartlepool knows me.
Yeah.
So you get a young gentleman called Neil, walks onto the gun battery and starts talking to me about his house, how he's had all these things happening, how he's got all these bits and bobs going on. And I said, well, okay, fair enough. I'll come over and have a look at it. As soon as I walked into his house, I just turned around to him and I went, mate, you need people out of here. There's a woman buried in your cellar, and you've got a particular gentleman on the top floor who's really, really nasty, really nasty. I said, I've got to come back. So I left. I'm not quite sure how the BBC got involved, but the BBC found out about it. And the guy from the BBC came up from the local area, and he wanted me to record while I was going around.
This is around the gun battery?
No, this is around the house.
The house, yeah.
So I'm in that house, and I get a phone call before I go in from Steven Spielberg. I get this phone call. I didn't know it was him, but this is how it went. Sitting at home in my office, little office, phone rings, picks it up. And a guy at the other end went, you've got, I believe you're doing this programme and you're going in to clear this house. Could you explain to me what it is? So I sat down with him and said, oh, yeah, you know. And so I gave him related the story about the family, the kids and everything else. And then I went, who is this? And he said, it says, oh, it's Steven Spielberg. I said, oh, I should have told you. And I went, oh. And then I'm thinking, this is a joke. Got to be a joke.
Yeah.
So I put the phone down. Well, he says, here's my number, ring me back when you're ready. Because I said to him, oh, I'm a bit confused by this. I'm not sure. So I put the phone down. I knew my brother was working in America, and I thought me and my brother have a lot of jokes with each other, particularly about this sort of subject. Because he's army-based, and he's very clear as anything, because it keeps me grounded. So I did a bit of research, rang the number back, and it was him, and I was absolutely floored.
Wow.
He had invented a film called Monster House. It's a kids' animated film. They'd invented a story, and they didn't realise it was a real story happening here in the UK. So when he heard about it, his first thing was he wanted to check it with me, so he did. So his crew came over and filmed me clearing that house and doing everything I had to do in it. Just after we'd left, they found the body, which his story is about a woman's body in the floor.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same as this house. It was a woman's body. They've moved the body. It was a nun that was in this house, and they've consecrated it, moved it into the other area. But the fascinating thing was, I'm on the top floor. We'd got no electricity on. And I said to the camera crew, I said, look, I'm going to prove to you how real this thing is. Because we were in that room, and I took a breath out, and it was freezing. You could see my breath.
Yeah.
And it was the middle of summer. And I said to him, give me a number, because this light bulb, it was a light bulb hanging above my head. And I went, give me a number, and the light bulb will flash. Well, jokingly, the cameraman went, 13. And we all looked up, and the light bulb, I swear to you, it went bing, 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 13
They got
times.
it on camera?
They've got it on camera, yeah.
Is it in the feature?
They did a documentary on me. It only went to America, but they did a documentary on me.
And it's part of the Monster House DVD, isn't it?
Yeah,
The US
you get it as an extra as this DVD thing.
Wow.
He filmed it, and then the cameraman, it just shows you how brave they are. The cameraman's there, they have the light above the camera.
Yeah,
filming. 13th thing, his camera, that light just blew him into smithereens. And that was it. They were all out. Everybody was out of the house. Okay. They went back in to check. There was no electric because I was saying to them, there was nothing, That family had been plagued for 23 years before I even got involved in it.
Wow.
And it took me a whole week. The guy that was in there was a murderer. He'd murdered his kids. So he was attacking the kids in this new family's house. And they'd put up with it for a while. But what really got him going was, they would sit at night time and they'd hear a piano playing downstairs.
Yeah.
But he hasn't got a piano. When that stopped, you could hear a grandfather clock tick outside the front door. And they've got no grandfather clock neither. So there was lots of things going on.
Yeah.
He got keys, he had his own medals, he was a war veteran, he got medal. All these things were all disappearing all the time in the house. I have a photograph of his bedroom, right, where there are tables and chairs and items all sitting on the bed.
Yeah.
Okay, with his wife Donna lying on it. And I swear to you, the table that's on it was from the bank down the road. You'll see a coat rack on it with all these coat racks. That's from the next door neighbour's house. The table, by the way, you couldn't get in the door. You had to dismantle it to get it in. So this is the story about that. He heard a noise downstairs, went downstairs, made a cup of tea, came back upstairs, and he found his wife lying on the bed with all this furniture all over her. 5 minutes, that's all it took. And that's what freaked him out. Yeah. But that shows you the power of how they go. But that's led me on to doing, since that film, that's led me on to doing all sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff.
Well, like I've seen you on Cities of the Underworld.
Yes, I did that as a programme. Yeah.
What else?
Most
Haunted?
I've done the Most Haunted with the Most Haunted team. That was series 2 to series 5.
Yeah.
And then I did the Monster House thing with Stephen and his crew. I've done a lot of BBC programmes. I've done I Believe with Joe Swash.
Yeah.
Took him around doing
that was quite recent, wasn't it?
That's a recent one. Yeah. I've just done a BBC podcast about the Battersea poltergeist. That's just hit the roof. I'm doing another one with them as well.
You opened a haunted museum in Hull.
I've opened up an extraordinarium. It's called the Extraordinarium. I've been very lucky in my life, Pete. I've been all over the world collecting items. From skulls, I've got a real skull, through to dolls, through to a little pair of tap shoes. All these items are all haunted in some way. I have a divot box, which is probably one of the nastiest things you're ever going to come across. I've got a doll, which is a killer doll. I've also done a thing which stopped me 2 years ago, where I went into a house and this woman went on fire in front of me. And that's just hit the thing again. So we're doing a whole thing about her. One of the TV series I'm doing is about that as a thing. I've got I could probably keep you going all day long on all sorts of different stories.
Has there been any moments where you've just gone in somewhere and gone,
yeah, there's...
Fuck that. I'm not going near that. There's got to be. Come on, there's got to be like...
There's three I can think of. There's a house in Scarborough. It's just outside Scarborough. It's actually gone now. They've flattened it. But it's a bungalow in actual fact. I get a phone call from a friend of mine who's he's from the fire brigade up there. He rings me one night and he says to me, "With a problem, we think it could be right down your alley. Can you come to Scarborough, just outside Scarborough, and meet us?"
Yeah.
And this was like 10 o'clock at night. So I literally just threw my stuff on, jumped in the car and drove up there. Got to this house, little bungalow, and the fire crew's standing outside, and there's a great big burly lad there, and he's got one of those axes. And he said, "I'll show you something." He went to the front door and he hit it as hard as he possibly could, and it just bounced off. And he went, "We can't get in. There's a woman in there with a child, and we need to get to her." So I'm like, right. So I'm sitting there going, "Well, what do you want me to do? Surely break a window." And he went, "Watch." And he did the same thing, bounced off. I put my hands on the window and I got like you might as well have hit me with 4,000 volts of electricity. I flew backwards. I could feel the energy in there was really nasty. You've got to talk about the word poltergeist.
Yeah.
Right? So if I said poltergeist to people, the first thing they always do is go, "Oh, scary, evil, nasty."
Yeah.
And yet I go, yeah, but there are stages in life, how you develop. There's also stages in a ghost's life, how it develops. Poltergeist is the second form of energy, second form of communication. The first type is, if I give you an example, is when you walk into a room and you go, "It feels a bit funny in here." It's that sensation. Yeah. But a poltergeist actually will make a noise. The word means noisy ghost.
Yeah.
Poltern is noisy. So a poltergeist actually isn't the nastiest ghost you're ever going to come across. It's probably one of the friendliest because it makes a noise. So if we were in here now and I say, "Is there anybody in here?" and I say, "Make a noise," and it clicks, that's a poltergeist.
I was just literally expecting a click to go then.
Doors over there. Yeah. So it's a noise, but it could speak. It could move an object. As long as it's making a noise, that's a poltergeist. Now the difference is this. If I was to give you a set of weights and said to you every day, practice with these weights, after a while, your body's going to get used to them. So you're going to find one something heavier.
Yeah.
And then after you've got used to them, you want something stronger. Poltergeist the same. It will do a noise for a while, then think, "I'm bored of that. I can do a bit more. I've learnt more. I can touch you." Once it's learnt how to do that, it then says, "I can move an object. I've learned how to move it." It'll probably jump it first, but eventually it learns how to move it. Then it learns how to levitate. Then it learns how to get into you and control you.
Yeah.
So we're stepping up all the time. So how do I know something's nasty? Depends on what sliding scale it's hit me at.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've written a whole book about the levels, and because ghost hunting teams aren't still fully aware of what levels you're dealing with and how they're dealing with them, what they're dealing with. Very, very rarely you'll come across anything nasty, but when you do, you've got to be very prepared for it, because it's the difference is this. If you and I would walk around Scunthorpe, there are some nasty people in Scunthorpe. You can find them all the way around. Yeah. Any town.
Yeah.
But you actually walk down the street and you see somebody holding a machete in their hand or a machine gun in their hand, and it spots you, you've got a difficult problem, haven't you? Where do I go?
Yeah.
Because if you start running, it runs. Now, a ghost is exactly the same, except the difference is with a ghost, you don't necessarily know it's there until it's last minute, and that's when it becomes very difficult.
When you got the 5,000 volts.
Yeah, and that's what I did. So knowing this and knowing how they work and knowing what they do can give me a clue as to what I'm dealing with. And it doesn't have to be demonic. It can just be a very angry, nasty type of energy. So when I get somewhere and I get a bolt like that from this place in Scarborough, I know immediately I'm dealing with something pretty big level. As it was, we managed to force the door open. They jimmied the door open. We got in. But I'm telling you something, much like you've got brickwork in a house, there was fingerprints, scoops. Like it's like, if you put your finger in butter and you scoop it out, you'll see that. But imagine that in walls and the concrete floor that it was on. It was scooped out and you could see something had gone on. But this thing was there for maybe 15 minutes and then gone. And I don't know where it went. I've got no idea. But my presence certainly alerted it to the fact it was not going to stay around much. Not that I scared it. It just became aware of it. Yeah. Because it's going to sound weird again. I have like a team that I can talk to. So behind me is like a police force.
Right, yeah.
It's not me doing the work. I'm like the conduit. I'm like the mouthpiece, I suppose, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They do all the work. They do it. I just control what's going on. And it's weird. Because I'm as rational as anybody else. I don't necessarily, just because somebody says to me, I've got an evil ghost in me, doesn't necessarily mean to say it's evil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I always logicalise everything. I'll go into a place, sit in it for 5-10 minutes and go, well, it's wooden, or it's windy today, or I'll do exactly what everybody else does.
Like any sceptical or whatever.
Yeah, because I've had... I remember once doing a programme down in London. Big house, 8 mediums in there, and we were all sat there trying to do stuff, and it was a con. The house wasn't haunted. I couldn't get it. I'm like, this is a bit odd. And it was the Sun newspaper. And so I came out and said to the blog, I said, I must be having a bad day. I can't sense or feel anything. Walked out, and they went, no, it's a con. We just wanted to see who was true or not. And he said, we think we believe you. Would you come to another house? But so all the way through my life, I'm dealing with skeptics. I'm dealing with things like this. So what I've had to do now, I've built a team up. I deal with a Catholic layman who's been ordained and everything in the Vatican. I deal with rabbis. I deal with scientists. I deal with everything because I've got to get my head around what's going on. Yeah. I just seem to be lucky or unlucky, depending on which side of the life you're looking at, that I'm being thrown things all the time. I get calls. I must get 2 or 3 calls a day asking me to look at somebody that's possessed or something that's going on or stuff like this. So I have to analyse it. I'm not one of these that'll run out and go, yeah, don't worry, I'll come down. We go through a long process before I go and deal with it.
You've been invited to do one in this building, haven't you?
Yeah.
A while back.
Downstairs, yeah.
Yeah, in the bar?
Yeah, it was, Was
it in our old office?
It was in your old office, yeah.
Yeah.
That was years ago. Absolutely years ago.
It was really interesting when you came in and told us.
Yeah. But again, it's like you've got a presence in this building that doesn't want to try and cause you any harm, but will affect your electricity. So it could cut things out. It could stop a machine working. It could do, but it's curiosity that's driving that thing.
Yeah, we have had quite a few unexplained power cuts.
There you go.
Downstairs in the bar, there's been a picture that's kind of was resting against the wall. And then it's just totally unnaturally tipped over. And they got that on CCTV. So, It's pretty spooky.
Because it's their way of showing you that they're there. I mean, again, if you think about it, they're not doing anything nasty.
No. Yeah.
You know? What I would worry about is if you came to a machine one day and there was a pool of water next to it. Yeah. If it's not leaky roof and it's not down to something else, then you've got a ghost that's really trying to play tricks with you because it's trying to electrocute you.
Yeah.
So then you know you've got a big issue.
Yeah. So when you've kind of been in, you've seen like these spirits, ghosts, poltergeists taking over people's houses. Kind of how do you clear that? What's like the
there's no.
Is it like just negotiation, or is it like?
Yeah. Well, that's what I call myself, a negotiator. That's seriously it's what I do. Pete, if I walked in here and I bumped into one of the lads in here and stuff, and I didn't say sorry, that person's going to be annoyed.
Yeah.
So sometimes in life, if I'm a ghost in here and I'm sat in here and you walk into me, after a while I'm going to be thinking, what are you doing that for? I would maybe get annoyed.
Yeah.
So sometimes I've gone into places and said, let's apologise, let's work it backwards, let's just try and make it friendly. But I'm listening all the time to what's going on, what my feelings are, what the room's doing. But I listen to people because people can sometimes unwittingly say things without realising what they're telling me. And then I go, that's this. Yeah. I'll tell you now, right, very easily. If you ever talked or looked at programmes about mass murderers, they're the nicest people you can come across.
What, the mass murderers?
They're generally very nice, very friendly, yet they've got this perverted side that wants to kill. Does that make sense? Yeah, so when you come across Well, if you look at good mass murderers, my girlfriend, she's into all this. So we've looked at some of the background stories to Dahmer and Jeffrey Dahmer and what you call him. I've got his clown's mask as well. The clown killer in America. I forgot what they call him, but they were all really nice people, all very chatty, all very helpful, all very. But once they get you alone, murder. Yeah, so they're nice. And we often say in dealing with ghosts, the nicer they are, the more of a twist they've possibly got with you.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful.
Yeah.
So you've got to be a bit wiser. But so sometimes if I'm listening to people and they say, no, it was really nice when it first started, it was always doing this, then I'm thinking, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Because you've got the traits of it saying, I've got a really nasty side, I'm going to damage you. I'm going to really hurt you. And so therefore you've got a bad energy at that side of it, So I'm listening all the time and I'm watching what they're doing and I listen to the stories, and there's like a pattern in some cases where they do certain things. And then depending on whether it's religious, non-religious, or whether it's just an energy form of 2 or 3 things that have got together. You see, as human beings, Pete, we socialise.
Yeah.
COVID was a killer because suddenly it became you can't go and talk to people. You can't
do anything.
And it becomes a bit awkward.
Yeah.
Ghosts are just the same. No change in that. They'll stick together. The big case I did, where the woman went on fire, it started playing with the kids first. And how it started with her, she heard footsteps outside the property.
Yeah.
So she undid the curtains like anybody else, looked. Well, as soon as she undid the curtains and looked outside, it saw her and took it as an invite. You've seen me, I see you, I'm coming in. Came in the house. Then it was footsteps all around the house. And then it started rocking the kids to sleep. And then the kids were finding, when they got really, really hot, this thing was taking the clothes off them. So it started off really nice.
Yeah.
Over a period of months, it got to a point where it would wake the kids up. It would bang on doors. It would turn lights out. It was starting to get a little bit more nasty.
Sinister, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that when you go in? Obviously, so say you come in here, a ghost doing like nasty things or whatever, it's, like you say, trying to electrocute me, you come in, I call up, Ralph, really need your help. What's the process?
I have to get familiar.
And where does that spirit go as well when kind of it's...
Oh, right, okay, I can answer quite a lot of that then, right,
yeah,
fine. No. You're like everybody else when I get meeting them. They all want to know all these answers.
Yeah.
So I go through a process, first of all, I'm not going to go into any property. The Harrogate thing taught me a lesson. If I go in full guns blazing, it's going to come out at me full guns blazing, and I'm going to be the one that loses because I have a physical form, it hasn't.
Yeah.
So what I tend to do now is I tend to go in and I tend to sit for a while and work out what it's doing around me. It'll know I'm there because I'll know it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I wouldn't be there if it wasn't there in the first place. So I'll work out what it's doing and how to approach it. Now my first approach is to literally try and communicate with it. I don't want to know its name. It's the most stupid thing in the world you can ever do. The moment you introduce yourself to a ghost and it introduces itself to you by asking names, you've introduced yourself, and so suddenly it can become familiar with you and attached to you. Okay? So here's the thing. I go in there and I'm just trying to figure out what it is, what's going on with it. I've got to work out who I'm going to call in the same spirit form to deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so part of your team kind of in there.
So if I put myself as a policeman, I might walk into somebody's home where there's trouble, and I might be looking at this thing thinking, I'm going to need more people. So I'll make a phone call to say, need backup guys. Or I might go in there and realise the house is on fire. I need the fire brigade. I need an ambulance. I need a doctor. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going in, deciding on what process I need to do. I'll have looked at whether it's religious or not. So I then deal with whether it's a religious factor, do a religious ceremony. If it's not, then we deal with it on a spiritual level. So it's a completely different way of dealing. Then I have to work with it. If it starts attacking me, I have to bear with it.
Yeah.
If I physically feel like I'm in danger, I will leave. I am not frightened of going in and doing something and then leaving, but come back in again. Any army tactician will tell you the same. You never keep fighting. If you think you're going to lose, you've got to back off a bit and then recoup and go back in. And it might take me a week, a month. The case with the woman on fire, 3 months I was dealing with that. Going in, coming out, going in, coming out. We ended up getting rid of all the kids out of the house because they were getting slapped. One of the cots was on fire with a baby in it. So one of the chairs was thrown down the stairs. Cot thing was thrown down the stairs. I had 7 vicars in there at one go. That's how serious that case was. So even the church didn't take it lightly. They knew it was something serious. But all the time I'm dealing with it, I'm negotiating with it. I spent 2 nights sleeping in there and actually got physically attacked myself with it. It woke me up one night, threw me out of bed. But I'd gotten to a point where I knew its capabilities. But bear in mind, I'm dealing with a spirit. I've got a spirit. They'll stand with me. So I know if I get attacked, they're going to attack. So, and there are far more good, better energies in this world than there are poor, bad. Yeah. So we went with that. Now, what do I do with that? When we actually got this thing, we actually, as an energy force, I can do several things. But imagine if you're on the sea.
So when you say you've got it, what do you mean? Like you've
held it.
Held it. Okay.
Physically held the energy.
Yeah.
So imagine I've got a light bulb and I've got the energy in the light bulb and the light bulb's going, but I've got it in that glass bowl. I've got it, spirit round it. I've got it. We've got it. We've held it. I then decide what to do with it. Do I smash it to destroy it? Do I box it, get rid of it, or bury it? Yeah? Or do I just sit with it and go, right, that's your state for the rest of your life. You're going to sit there lit but contained. This thing, we knew we had to dispel it. So what we had to do with this thing was we didn't have to break it. We had to pull its energy apart. Now, if you're in the middle of the wind and the wind's hitting your face, if you put your hands in front of your face, you split the wind up. So the wind will go around you and split. Yeah. And that's what we're doing with that energy. We are literally putting our hands in it or moving it apart and pulling it apart. And then we dispel it. It gets thrown away. It just gets pushed into the rest of the ether to get rid of it. Wow. It's very long, complicated. This is not a 5-minute job. Anything I do on this level is not... I'm not sitting in there having my tea, going to have something and then walking out. Like I say, 3 months. I'm dealing with a case in Glasgow. Okay, 13 years I've been dealing with it.
How often do you go up and...
Whenever I can, because it's an energy that I know we can't shift. It's an energy I know I can't stop. It's just, it attacks this woman. It makes her limbs go...
What makes something floppy. Not been able to stop it? Is it just like the strength? Like
it's the strength of it, yeah. It's bigger and stronger than,
Like the one in Scarborough.
Yeah, bigger and stronger, and it'll be there, and there's nothing you can do. You can't compete with it. You can't do anything with it. You have to bear with it, or you have to contain it. And that's what we're doing with this thing. We're containing it. We're just keeping it where it is until we work out what to do with it. But it takes 13 years on. We've had scientists on it, mechanics on it, we've engineers on it, we've the quantum physicists on it. We've got everything on it. Wow. And nobody can figure out. And because it's managing to outthinkers. This is what I'm going to get onto. If I could stay around for the rest of eternity, okay, I'm going to tell you something. I would learn a lot. My intelligence level will be very, very high. Yeah. Okay. Because I would be learning all the time. So if you've got a ghost or an energy that's been here since the beginning of time, it'll outthink you or I because it's so clever with what it knows about humans. So sometimes when you come across an energy force, it's bigger and wiser and stronger than you and I are. Yeah. And you've either got to back off or, like I did with the 7 vicars, brought in more people to deal with it. Because that's the only way of fighting it. It can get very scary.
That's crazy.
The woman that went on fire in front of me, it stopped me doing it. I actually thought, that's it, I can't deal with this anymore, because I'd always up until that point said to people, I've never come across an energy that would kill you. Yeah. If you're evil enough, you don't want to kill the thing you're taunting. You'll keep taunting it. The moment you kill it, you've lost your fun. Yeah, yeah. You've lost. So I always said that, but this thing came as near as killing her as you could possibly want to go, because it set fire to her. And it was the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen. And yet, I ripped her trousers off her, because she had these elasticated trousers. Yeah. I ripped them off her, because they were on fire. Yeah. And when we all looked at the trousers after she'd been put out and got wrapped up in a blanket, we looked at the trousers, and you can't tell they were even on fire. And yeah, I've got witnesses that all saw it.
That's crazy.
Unbelievable. And when I put my hands on her to actually hold her, to stop her struggling, because she was really, well, you'd be panicking, and she was. She was terrified. Put my hands on her, the flame actually was freezing. It was cold. It wasn't hot. It wasn't what I was expecting, and it shocked me. But she had burns and everything. It was awful.
What's been the most kind of rewarding part of?
Definitely, the one I always take pleasure out of was a gentleman I met who I told was going to visit a nun.
Yeah.
And this nun would look after him and keep him safe and stuff like this. And I could see this nun shape next to him. And now, bearing in mind, he didn't know a nun. He's not religious. He's got no background in nuns or anything like that at all. So he goes and flies out to Thailand, okay, on business trip, steps off the plane and has a massive heart attack. So he collapses on the actual runway. And the only thing and I've a lovely letter from him, the only thing he remembers looking up and this nun was leaning over him, holding his hand. So he held onto her hand and he's talking to her and she's talking to him. And she just basically was saying things like, you'll be fine, you'll be calm, don't worry about it, they're on the way, just keep breathing, keep looking at me. All the way in the ambulance, all the way to the hospital, go into the operating theatre where they open his chest up and they do all the operations on him. When he wakes up next morning, she's sat there with him, talking away to him. She does a prayer to him and then walks off. And then he gets up 2 or 3 days later, comes round more, and he starts asking for this nun. And the doctors and his wife turned round to him and went, what nun? And he's going, the nun that held my hand on the airport, and it was all in the ambulance. She went, there was no nun with you. And then he realised the conversation I had with him about a year before that was about a nun going to help him and save him.
Yeah.
And he came back to the UK and he wrote me a lovely letter saying he remembered the nun. And if it hadn't been for the nun focusing on the nun, he thinks he would have passed away and gone. Yeah. But the nun kept him there. So that's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. At the minute, I'm dealing with 3 cases, 13 years apart, 3 different continents, okay, but the same figure that's reversed an illness. There's a woman in the UK, in Sheffield, was told that she'd got cancer right through her body. And so she sold a business, moved in with her daughter. They built next door the garage. They've turned it into a flat for her because she knew her life was going to be terminated. So she didn't want to have any debts or anything else. So she wanted to live her life the best as she could. She remembers lying in bed one night, and what she described to me was this golden figure, just like a golden look, looked at her and touched her foot, and she said she shivered and fell asleep immediately. When she got up next morning, she felt like alive, so she just thought, what a nice dream.
Yeah.
She went to the hospital to go and get the tests for cancer and everything on her. They scanned her and did everything else. She came home 2 days later. The hospital phoned her up and said, something must have gone wrong with the machine. Can you come back in? Can we redo them? We need to have another look. So she did. She went back. Now she's thinking it's got worse.
Yeah.
And they now want to find out more. So when they'd done all that, 2 days later, she gets a phone call from the doctor, and the doctor went, we can't work this out. We're going to have to send you to another hospital. Both scans have come back as though you've got no cancer.
And that's 3 times over.
Well, she went to the 3rd hospital. Okay, and I forget where this other hospital was. But they also said, there's nothing in your body. There's no cancer.
Wow.
So she sat with the doctor and she said, well, that's really weird. And she says, but I've also got this other funny thing. She says, on my big toe is a new mole, quite a big one. And when they scanned the mole and I look at the mole, it almost looks like a fingerprint. Okay? So she tells me this story. What she doesn't know is that 13 years ago, I was dealing with a woman out in South Africa who told me exactly the same story that she was telling me. And these 2 people don't even know each other. And they're completely different religious backgrounds. But she described this golden figure. I'm leaving something out because I don't want to tell everybody else out there what the other distinguishing feature was. But these 2 women describe exactly the same character who did exactly the same thing, cured this woman of cancer. And then I get a call from Nigeria, from a woman in Nigeria, okay? And she tells me exactly the same story. Her condition's completely different. She had a brittle bone disease and she'd lived with it all her life. And suddenly this thing came up, touched the foot, give her a mole on the foot, and No brittle bone disease. It's cured.
That's crazy.
So I have the opposite. I not only have this demonic side of things, but I have this angelic side.
Yeah.
And it's a mystery. And I've interviewed them all and talked to them all, and it's fascinating that there are energies out there that can do an awful lot.
Yeah, that is. That's like...
Yeah. But
we need more of them in the world.
But, you know, when I look at what I've been doing, I fell into this by accident. It wasn't... I didn't want to go down this line of becoming an exorcist. That's not... I didn't. Didn't even want to do mediumship. I actually ended up going to university to paint and draw because I'm creative. I love that side of things. Much like you do with your programs here. You know, when you're creative, you're actually open up to a lot more things than you realise.
Yeah.
Because you're more acceptant.
Yeah.
Because creativity means you'll push boundaries. You know, somebody says if you've got a square block and you put it in the middle, it's balanced. Whereas you and I would go, well, I'm going to stick it in a corner. I want to see what that looks like. You know what I mean? I might put it on the outside.
And then the people of OCD are like, nah, it's got to go.
It's got to go there. Yeah. So you can see, can't you? So whenever I've done this, I've always had an open mind. I've also talked to a lot of religious people as well. Because I've wanted to understand things from... Why are there angels? Why are there demons? Why do we have all these figures? Why are all these religions doing what they're doing? You know, and I've always said anyway, if you have a belief system, stick to it. If that's what you believe it. You know, but these energies exist whether you believe or whether you don't.
Who's the one person you'd love to talk to, communicate? If you could, out of everybody, like who's ever lived.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Einstein.
Okay.
Seriously.
Good choice.
Because that guy, when you look at some of his theories and you look at some of the things he's done, even some of the letters he's written to people, his mindset was so far apart from everybody's that I loved it because he pushes all the edges of everything, you know. And again, there's a figure that everybody's now talking about. Some of his theories aren't right and some of this, well, it doesn't matter. He actually got us all going. He got us all rolling. So he's a figure I would have loved to have said to him, what the heck's going on with me? Can you explain to me what... Because I don't sit down today and sit and think, how am I doing this? I just do it.
Yeah.
I just get on with it. I do a stand-up show here. I did one...
That, Wicked...
The Wicked Bar where we...
the old Wicked Bar in Scunthorpe. You take it over, and
Yeah, I've got Wicked Images in there, my photography agency. But I thought one night, I'd been asked by loads of people, would I do a stand-up? So I went, yeah, all right. So I did a stand-up in there. I don't think anything of it. I just stand there and I go, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. And people come to me and they tell me all sorts. You'll remember Alan, sports Alan, we know.
Yeah, I was filming.
Well, he was here, Alan Raymond. Yeah, he was here.
Yeah.
And I'm sat talking to him, doing a reading on him, and I said to him, I can see a box, I can see this glass object. I said, it looks like a paperweight, but I don't see one, I can see hundreds. And he there went, oh my God, his mother used to collect loads of paperweights. Well, it's not something you can guess, is it?
No,
it's not something you'd sit down and think, well, I know, I'll talk about paperweight.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think that's the thing everybody does. So even he walked away like, wow, you know. And I think that there's a side to this stuff that's really good. And that's what my TV series is going to be about. The guys that are listening to me are understanding some things I can't tell people where things are because I have this privacy thing. When I go and deal with somebody's house, the last thing they want me to do is point at that house and go, well, look, they've had all this issue. They don't want it. So I'm relating stories that are real, but I'm actually trying to tell you why.
So where's the TV series going?
We don't know yet.
So it's kind of just in a pilot.
We've got a pilot. I know we're looking at Discovery. I know we're looking at Smithsonian Channel. We're looking at History Channel as well because there's things in it. I don't just talk ghost. I'm talking about the history of a place, the science of it. I've got like the religious level coming and tell you about his view on it. So I want people to go away knowing that I'm going to give you a vast amount of information and you can decide on yourself. I have the lady that went on fire. She's willing to talk on camera, so we're going to talk. Wow. She'll tell you her story. Yeah. I have another guy where we found a blue teddy bear and a hidden room in his house he never even knew. And that was through me going in to talk to him and telling him what was going on there. He's coming on camera to tell his story. So we've got various things that are kind of going on, but you've got to remember that this sort of stuff, it can happen to anybody. Don't matter where you are or who you are. It used to happen to me when I was teaching you guys. In fact, if you remember, I used to be sitting talking to you guys about all this stuff anyway, and I just kept saying to you, "Are you just trying to waste a lesson?"
No, I remember when I was at college, like, you came in and you kind of said you did all this. You kind of was just open and honest, and I was like, yeah, all right then. And then I think someone had brought in, I don't know, it was like a front magazine or something like that, and was flicking through it, and then there was like 4 pages about, I was like,
That was me,
like,
yeah.
fucking hell. And then like, I think in the Sun as well, like,
That's
there was
right.
like something in there. So yeah, it was crazy. I loved hearing going through college the kind of story of your agency and stuff as well. You know, kind of your illustration agency.
Yes.
How you grew that? Did you want to just kind of
Oh yeah, when I came back from the UK, the idea was I wanted to do illustration. When I came into Scunthorpe, and I was like, well, there was nothing here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to draw and paint, but I didn't just want to do like local pets for people. I wanted to do books. I wanted to get involved in advertising, marketing. So I bumped into another guy in the town, and between us, he was like, he painted like animals, tigers, things like this, but watercolours, whereas I was always airbrush mechanical. And I saw if we joined together, the two of us could get work for each other. So I literally did that. Then I jumped in a car one day and drove to Leeds, and I knocked on every advertising agency's door, and I showed the portfolio, and then I met a few other illustrators, and suddenly I had this bigger portfolio, and people started talking to me saying, well, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And
what kind of clients did you work with?
Oh, you name them. Saatchi was one of the ones I had. Penguin Books, Walker Books, Cadbury's. The big one for me was Waddington's. I did all their games.
And that was just going out knocking on doors.
Just knocking on doors. Having the barefaced cheek to
people watching this, I'll be thinking, I want to do something a bit different. Just like me and Luke, when me and Luke founded, we saw kind of a little gap in the market locally for what we wanted to do. You obviously did the same. There's probably people watching this. What kind of, like, would you say? Like,
my advice to anybody is believe in yourself, right? Don't judge yourself against others neither. Because the worst thing you're going to do in life is you're going to sit and go, well, they're better than me. They're not. You're all the same. It's just people's choice as to whether they want you or that person, you know? Because if I drop back to Derek Okora and Colin Frown and others who I knew, yeah, they were at the top of the tree, but they could do exactly what I could do. They had a different style and a different way and they became popular. Yeah. But if you've got a business idea and you've got something you want to do, believe in yourself, believe you can do it, and prove it by doing it. Don't just talk about it, do it. And then don't be frightened of going up to some people and saying, I'm quite good at this, will you give me a chance? And that's all I used to do. I used to knock on doors. Yeah. But I was a bit cheeky than that because I used to say to them, you know, look, I can do it with you. I'll do the first one for free to prove to you I can do it. Yeah, but the next job I get, I want it at the correct price.
Yeah.
And that's how I got all my clients. I literally was a bit cheeky. Once I got a client going with me, I just used to then find others. So I used to sit and talk to other illustrators. So yeah, from sitting in my bedroom at home, that's how I started. In my bedroom with actually I had a door, took a door off, put it on a table, and that was my table, my first table.
Nice.
And I just painted. And then from that to running, we had 100 illustrators at one time and a massive agency.
Like freelance?
All freelance. All freelance. And that was the agency. But I believed I could do it. Yeah. That was the point.
That's the difference. If you believe, if you actually genuinely believe you can do something enough, I genuinely think you can.
Big thing. I've got to say to everybody, big thing, right? If you're going to start a business, don't go out and buy the biggest, best cars, the most expensive equipment, because you're going to kill yourself off with overheads. You're going to kill. Do the job that you're supposed to do. What I found after a while, I didn't need the big agency because most of my clients, I went to see them.
Yeah.
And nobody cares what. My photography now is the same. When you look at the photography page I've got and all the pictures I've done, you know, when you look at the studio I've got, you'd look and think, really? In there? And yet I'm doing it, you know? Yeah. I think you just believe in yourself. That's my big thing, believe in it. Because if you believe that you can do it, you'll do it. And also, I always was willing to learn.
Yeah.
Always. Even now, I'll listen to others. I'm not big enough to sit and think, I know it all. Because you don't. I could watch you doing something on here and think, oh, didn't know they do it that way. So you learn. You know?
I watch kind of other people do like edits are,
Yeah.
and I'm constantly learning all the time.
I work backwards actually on a
Yeah.
lot of my photography. I'll go out and have a look at like Joel Grimes and one or two others, and I'll say, "How's he done that picture?" Because I want to, and then I'll go and
Like deconstruct it. And
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
and then you're going, oh, and then you add your flavour to it.
Yeah.
You add your bit to it. You know, Photoshop. I was self-taught. Nobody taught me how to do it. I just sat down with it one day and went, "I'm going to break this. I'm going to see how far I can go with it." Bear in mind, when I started Photoshop, it was Photoshop 3.
Wow.
It had no layers.
I can't even remember how many versions they got up to before the switch to.
It was 12, I think, or 11 or 12, something like that.
And then it was.
I've still got Adobe Photoshop 3, the whole box. It cost me 1,500 quid. It was like it's more than my Apple Mac computer.
Yeah.
It was a fortune. But yeah, it was a case of like, I'll learn it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what you've got to do, haven't you, really? So whether you're photographer, illustrator, businessman, whatever, I think you've just got to sit down and go, I'll have a go.
Yeah, you gotta.
But if you're entrepreneurial, you like me, yeah, I've got a photographic business, but then I've got a museum. In fact, I've got 2 museums. Off I go. Because I'm always wanting to have a go at that, I'll have a go at that, I'll have a go. Because my dad always said to me when I was little, he always used to say to me, if you throw enough pebbles in the pond, one of the ripples is going to come back, and that's the one that you need.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I've literally just thrown it. And I've been very lucky with the ghost side of things and the museum, that side of it, because I've not gone out and pushed it. Because I do what I do, and I do it well enough, these big agencies come to me. They'll come and talk to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been. In fact, this film crew came to me and said, "Can we do it?" It was the Geordie Shore lads.
I can imagine that. I can imagine Ralph Keeton and Geordie going around with a Geordie Shore guy.
I'd love to meet him. I've been to some very famous people's homes as well. And this is the thing I think you've got to remember is I've been to some of the richest of the rich, and I've been to some of the poorest of the poor.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a human being.
Yeah.
And just because they've got millions of pounds or they've got nothing, they're still humans. And I think at the end of the day, we can all work with everybody. It's your approach, isn't it?
Yeah, we forget that sometimes as well, don't we? So many people want kind of physical like things and stuff like that, and you don't.
It is, and I've always said I've been very humbled with everything I've done. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've lost businesses. I've done a lot of things, But when you become entrepreneurial, you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And the big thing for me is I've never been frightened of saying if it's not working, kill it off, do something else. Don't struggle with it.
What kind of businesses did you set up that failed?
Well, I tried to set up a card company selling images on cards, like birthday cards and things like this, because I'd seen one or two others doing it. I thought, we can do that. I knew a printer, talked to a printer.
How long ago was this?
10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Got it all up and running, got all the images out there, got talking to people. And I then suddenly realised at that point there were bigger fish in the sea than me, and they were just going to swallow me up. And it cost me a lot of money, and it cost me a lot of things to do. Although I say it cost me a lot of money, more time than anything else. And I realised very quickly it wasn't worth pursuing, so I jacked it in. The Extraordinarium, I've pulled it away from Hull at the moment because the building wanted looking at, and it was falling down basically. It was just too much. So at the moment,
the old Anison's funeral parlour, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. It's dangerous. So I've kind of pulled it away, and I've got all the stuff now sitting in my garage. So well, actually, I should say my mother's garage, and she's not too happy about that. But what can I do? I'm probably one of the few people in the world that's got 2 coffins sitting in the garage. That are actually one of them.
Got a doll collection in there as well.
I've got 50 haunted dolls.
Let's talk about what's in your mum's garage in a minute. I'm intrigued. So you got 2 coffins.
Right, I've got two full-size coffins.
Yep.
One's an oak one and one's a teak one. Inside those coffins at the moment, it's full of dolls. They're just all rammed in there.
Haunted dolls.
Haunted dolls, yeah. I've got, outside of that, I've got what we call the world's unluckiest chair.
Yeah.
If you sit in it, it gives you bad luck, and it's really bad luck. And it's been in no end of homes. People don't want it. And I've had a very rich person decide to get rid of it because he was losing money. Got rid of that, and he's now making money again. So it's sitting in my garage, and it's like a monk's chair, they call it. It's a very short chair.
There, do you?
What have I got else? I've got a skull from a young girl that was persecuted. So I've got hers
How
in there.
did you kind of come to get that?
Went to Scarborough, was in a house in Scarborough, talking away to this woman who was telling me that she'd got all these goings on and she kept seeing this woman walking around the house, but the weird thing was she was floating all over. And then I said, look, I don't know what's going on here, but I said, I think you need to take whatever it is that's in the loft out. She went, never been in. So I went upstairs, there's a box, opened the box up, there's this skull.
Don't you have to kind of like inform the police and stuff
Yeah,
like that?
they know. I've had the archaeologists onto it. They've told me what condition this lad. She's got sinus problems and she had everything.
Wow.
So they've analysed it, done everything with it. I've had it all looked at. It had some numbers on it, so it's obviously been used as a teaching skull, but it's real. It's a real skull, and it's unusual because it's got all its teeth, top and bottom, the jaw and everything. Normally, when you see skulls, it's generally the jaw skull. It's only young because all the platelets on the top are still fairly loose. So I've got that. What else is in that garage? I'm trying to think. I've got a haunted pram.
What does a haunted pram do? Just
The nanny killed the baby. So the woman that owned the property threw the pram out into the garden, and they kept seeing a woman in the garden for years. So when I went over, I bear in mind I didn't know about the pram was there. I went over and started talking to them all, and then I went, whatever artifacts you've got in the garden, I need to take it out, and it was this pram. So that came with me. I've got my haunted clown outfit. Genuine outfit.
Tell us a story about
It's a full length, from top to bottom, it's a big coat, and it's made out of velvet, and it's all different coloured patches. Right? And basically this clown was the same clown that when you watch the old adverts of old clowns, there's a guy who rides a bike that's actually made out of an old radiator.
Yeah.
And he rides it around, and it's his outfit. He apparently is the only clown that ever swam Windermere in his clown outfit, so we got that. But he used to annoy the family that much that his jokes got too much that they wanted him removing or just toning down. So we took it. I've got his outfit, including his slippers and his gloves and his mask and everything. So that's how I got that. He's funny. I've got the most unusual doll you could ever meet in your lifetime. It's got real teeth in it. Really evil. It's been on a film set. Ealing Studios were filming it.
That's creepy to look at.
It's very creepy. We sit it down. It's in a glass cabinet and it sits. And every day we go in, bear in mind this cabinet's locked. So every day we go in and we pass the keys to each other so we know that none of us could go in and alter it. But it'll stand, it'll sit. It sometimes lies on its back with legs in the air. It sometimes sits on all fours. It's got a head that spins. It's got hair that's not fully attached so it falls off.
Don't you ever think just put a camera in front of it?
We have done that, yeah. But every time we put a camera in front of it, it doesn't do anything. It's just one of those things. It's just. But I've got cameras. We are doing for this program.
So are the kind of like ghosts like aware and stuff like?
Oh yeah, fully aware. Yeah, they know what you're doing. That's why ghost hunting groups have a hard time because they look at them sometimes. I would. If I come back and see a ghost hunting group in a room, I'd be going, I'll wait till they've gone, or I might prank them. You know. Yeah. I have genuinely. I have a doll. 2 dolls
in the garage
that are battery powered and they communicate. Okay, they're called Lover-Bella dolls, and they talk to you. You feed them, they wave, they sleep, they do everything else. But you want to hear the language. One of them tells you to go and F off. Another one, we've got it on film where the woman that was moving it, she moved it to one side and it said, "Get off me, don't touch me."
Wow.
And it's not programmed in it. I've talked to the manufacturer in America. We've explained to him the words that are coming out and he said it's impossible. It's only programmed with 3,000 words.
Yeah.
And they're all baby sounds, they're all goo goo gagas and mama and basic things. So it can't have a full conversation with you, and yet this thing tells you what you're going to do.
Bit like Chucky.
Evil. Yeah. A bit like Chucky, yeah, but it's real.
Wow.
That we're filming because it does it regardless. So I've got the 2 dolls in there.
They don't give a shit, do they? Just like, no, we do what we want.
We're having that, yeah. I've got a pair of tap dancing shoes that are haunted. They're in there. I've got 2 pairs now. That's another pair. I've got the divot box, the Jewish divot box. I've had for 20 years. Didn't even know it was a divot box. And it's registered. It's from Poland. We know where it's from. We've got the family's artifacts. We've had it scanned. We know what's in it. And that's nasty. That's buried in a safe in my house. because nobody wants to handle it, and I certainly don't. When I drove it home, it was in Glasgow, drove it home, I had 2 punctures, my car broke down, and I was violently ill on the way home.
Shit.
But bearing in mind,
that is,
I just knew it was a bad box, but I didn't know it was a divot box. It really didn't. Because even the scroll underneath it was Jewish, but I don't read Jewish, so I didn't know. It was only till I showed a rabbi about 5 years ago that he went through the roof at me. Because it said on it, "This is evil. Please keep this hidden." What else have I? I could keep going. I've got parts of shells.
I think we need to do a video tour of just Ralph's garage.
I've walking canes. I've a deputy dog spoon about this big. The little kid that was using it put it into his mouth and it got stuck in the throat, and they rushed the kid off to hospital, and the kid died with this thing in its throat. Shit. And when they took the spoon out, nobody knew what to do with it, and the family wrapped it up, chucked it away, and ever since since I've had it, you can hear this kid coughing. And when I bring it out in front of people, and I don't tell anybody about it, I just lay it on the table, I don't do anything, you can see people going, they're always having a go at the throat.
Wow.
And it creates sore throats and everything, so.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Just a little spoon. I've got playing cards that are haunted. I've got, this is all in my garage.
What's your favourite thing?
My favourite thing?
You've got to have a favourite. A garage full of haunted treasures, you've got to have a favourite.
I think it's got to be that doll. The Healing Studio doll, the one that keeps moving and dancing and doing all sorts.
The one, where you keep swapping the keys over.
Yeah, because it started off with me and my brother. Every time I used to go and look at it, I used to say to my brother used to say to me, "You've got the keys, you've been playing with it." I kept saying, "No, I haven't. I went, "You have the keys." So we'd both leave the room, we'd come back the next day, we'd go in, and it's altered. And I go, "Well, now you've done it." So my mum gets them, and then my friend next door gets them. So we've done this thing to see, I've actually given the keys to a stranger once, right? And said, "Keep the keys. Just leave me with your mobile number." Explain to them that it was for a TV program. We wanted to make sure it wasn't, but I was just trying to. So she kept the keys, and the doll moved, and we went back to her. I said, "Hey, we got a statement from her saying she didn't know where I lived, she didn't know anything about it. It was just a thing." So it was just a show.
They just moved. That's crazy.
Great doll.
So if somebody's experiencing some kind of paranormal in the house,
so let's say it's bothering you. Let's say it's bumps, bangs, or you're feeling scared. I've got to say that in 99.999% of cases, it's a friendly ghost. It's just making a noise. It's just letting you know it's there, like a child would. If a child doesn't get your attention, a little baby, it gets louder and louder, or it smashes things and everything. Same with a ghost. It'll do, and it seems to escalate. The best thing to do is to say to it, "I know you're there. Thank you very much. Please calm down." And generally, it does, because it just wants recognising. Just wants to let you know it's there. Who it is the next stage, because it might be family, and it generally is. I always say to people, "Where's the most haunted place you can go?" And people always go, "Oh, graveyards, castles, battlefields." And I go, "No, your own home." Because your home's full of your family.
Yeah.
Granddad, great-granddad, great-great-grandmother, aunties, nieces, they're all there. And it depends if it's one of them doing it. Generally, it is.
So could you go in most houses and see people's family and stuff?
Yeah, I do. I don't do it anymore, but I used to go and do a lot of readings in people's homes. And it was quite easy for me, really, because I used to go in, sit down, I'd shut my eyes, because I never used to look at anybody, just sit down, and I'd talk about who was standing next to me, who was around me. Generally, it was auntie, uncle, brother, friend. It could be a family friend from ages ago, and it was always fascinating to do.
Yeah.
Occasionally, it might be the owner of the home before they've moved into it. Or sometimes it can be what you call a wandering spirit that knows the area but doesn't know the land that you're on. It would have walked it as a path.
Yeah.
So it could be an ancient kind of thing. So when I say ancient, I mean Victorian or whatever, because we've altered the streets since then. So it could be that kind of thing. But generally, if you've got anything in your own home, don't panic. Don't go rushing. The problem is, if you start thinking it's bad, you've got yourself in a mindset.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's evil, it's nasty. How many times in your life have you gone and met somebody and thought, not really, I'm not sure if I like this person. And then months later, you've met them again and thought, oh, I've got the wrong impression of them.
Yeah.
That's what we do. you know. So it's not always generally bad, but they just want to let you know there. Most ghostly spirits and energies just want you to know they're there, and that they'll do anything to say hello. Generally around kids is the best thing, because kids don't have this. You and I are adults. We've grown with the idea of death's final.
Yeah.
Death's death. I now know there's more on it than that, but a lot of people go, death's death, that's done. But kids don't know what death is. Youngsters don't understand it. Even if they lose a pet, we've done that thing of going, oh, it's gone for a walk, or it's gone back to its friends, or you don't really say it's died. We've buried it in the garden, or I've chucked it in the bin, whatever. You don't do that to kids.
Yeah.
You tend to soften it down. So when they meet a ghost or when they get involved with a ghost, they're not scared. Yeah. I don't see many kids that are scared. You get a few that cry. True story. This is not ghostly, but this is how we scare people, right? We say to kids, don't talk to strangers, don't take presents off strangers, don't go anywhere near a stranger you don't know. And yet, we present them with a Santa Claus who they don't know, who's big and fat and comes down a chimney, appears in their house, leaves them presents. Yeah? True story is, I remember talking to a child who was terrified of Santa, hated Christmas. Because his mum and dad had said, don't talk to strangers, Santa Claus is coming. Terrified. As an adult, we go, oh, that's stupid, what are they doing? Because as an adult, you know it's friendly, but as a child doesn't. I've had a child cry its eyes out because it thought a tooth fairy was going to steal its teeth. Because they think differently.
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, you will also notice that we treat things differently. We just kind of do things. Tell you another true story. Well, the more intelligent you are, the more chance a ghost is going to be around you.
That's an interesting.
I deal with more doctors, lawyers, high-end.
Why do you think that is?
Because your mindset's higher. You think in a different way. I find with people like that, what they tend to do is they'll be talking about a subject, but their mind isn't just talking to you about that subject. They're then deciding on course of action, what did happen yesterday, where they were the day before. Their minds are whizzing. And the other thing is with them, they tend to be more analytical. So they'll look at something and they just don't accept something dropped. They'll go, that's wet, that's rocky, this is... So they'll look at a table and go, so they'll delve into it more. And I've found more... And it's funny, isn't it, to sit down and think, I've had scientists come to me who you'd look at and think, well, surely, you would analyse it. Yeah. But even them are sitting saying to me, well, what about this? What about this? So I've actually genuinely found the more intelligent you are, the more ghost activity you're tending to have around you. Same with your kids. The more intelligent that child is, the more active that child is, the more it's getting.
So what's next for you now?
Next for me?
Yeah.
Book. I'm writing a book. In fact, I'm writing 2 books. One's on poltergeists and activities. One's on my life story.
Yeah, so like an autobiography.
Autobiography, yeah. Picking out some of the weirder things I've done, as well as some of the dramatic ones. So that's actually in the process now. TV series that I'm on with.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking to a film company at the moment about a major film where they want to use a character like me in the film to go and solve.
That'd be an interesting.
Yeah. They've not told me who the actor is at the moment, but they're sort of saying to me that there's a possibility of an actor sitting with me, talking to me, following me around, doing things around me, just so he can get an idea of what my brain says. I do know it's a female.
Nice.
Because they let that slip. So I don't know who it is, but I know it's on the cards. But like anything in TV.
If you could have any actor play you in a film, who would you?
Ooh.
Putting you on the spot now, Ralph.
Keanu Reeves, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves. Johnny Depp as well, but I think Keanu Reeves definitely.
Yeah, I could imagine Keanu Reeves playing a Ralph Keeton.
Yeah. Or my namesake, Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like him as well because he did Beetlejuice and stuff, and he's a good actor as well. So yeah, if I could have any of those two, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Keanu Reeves, Michael Keaton.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All I would ever say to anybody is to keep an open mind. Don't close it off. Keep an open mind, because not everything to deal with ghosts is bad. There's some magical things that happen around ghosts. So, it's kind of like a good thing sometimes. And not be frightened. But if you are, just leave a light on.
On that note, cheers for popping in, Ralph.
No problem.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.